I'm Chris,
And I'm Kiley. And this is Redefining Resilience,
where we explore what it means to build a resilient lifestyle
so you can thrive in any and every situation. Welcome back to Redefining Resilience.
Fuck yeah.
You're supposed to tone down the cussing.
I apologize.
Any whoozy whatsy, what are we talking about today, Christopher?
Any whoozy whatsy? Is that a thing? Are you 80?
Yes.
Today we're going to talk about realistic optimism.
Ooh.
Ooh is right.
I like optimism. I think I'm pretty optimistic.
There's a cartoon movie called Tangled, and in one of the songs they say...
It used to be called Rapunzel back in my day.
Her name is Rapunzel. The movie is called Tangled. Mm-hmm. And during one of the scenes, they go to a pub, and there's all these like...
Is Rapunzel old enough to drink?
No, she escapes her tower and goes to this pub because she doesn't understand that there are evil people. So she just walks in thinking that it's going to be awesome. I think it's called the Snoozy Duckling or something like that. It's the name of the pub. And she walks in and it's all these like huge, horrible men that are like massive and destroying shit. And they sing this song about dreams that's awesome. And one of the lines in it is, "I'm grotesquely optimistic."
Oh, I love that.
And I'm like, you know what? I like that. Grotesquely optimistic. I think that's cool. If we could do a cutout to that song, that would be hilarious.
Work on that, Kaylin.
Don't worry about it. That's not worth your time.
So if you haven't already seen Tangled, shameless plug here for it.
It's not worth it if you don't have daughters.
So realistic optimism is what exactly?
Well, we can start with the dictionary definition, or we can start with what you think it is. How would you define realistic optimism?
Let's start with the Googler definition.
So we've got two from the Googler. A way of thinking that involves acknowledging negative aspects of a situation while still maintaining a positive outlook and taking action. The second one is being firmly planted in reality. Now, there's a difference from blind optimism. They actually link this when you Google what is realistic optimism down at the bottom. It is different from blind optimism, which can involve self-deception and convincing oneself of a desired belief. It is not saying that I own the world, I can get everything I want, and my way is the right way. It is understanding the negative aspects of a situation while maintaining a positive outlook and taking action.
Yeah, I think the realistic part of this is key.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like grounded optimism.
Yes. As far as reality is concerned, which we all live in, I'm not just telling everybody that I'm perfect or the situation is perfect when it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, I don't know anybody really who has just blind optimism. I think that I have seen it in some cases where people are a little bit overly optimistic and don't really evaluate the risks or plan for the things that could go wrong.
Yeah. And I think that's the key difference between realistic and blind optimism. Yeah. Not evaluating the risks is walking into something blind.
Right.
So there's some characteristics of realistic optimism via the Googler. Accepting reality, maintaining a positive outlook, moving on from problems, and practicing gratitude. I think the coolest part about researching realistic optimism is that the U.S. Army has one that kept popping up.
That is super cool.
It is fascinating to me that a armed service has realistic optimism, like so baked into the concept of the group that it popped up every time I Googled it.
Well, and it also is a high performance team that has adopted these concepts, right? So I think we have to look at like what is expected of our military, and they're expected to do things that most humans would crumble in the face of. So if they're teaching our troops about realistic optimism and gratitude and these concepts that might seem a little woo-woo to some people, I think there's some science here that is unignorable.
Yes. Stood out a whole lot. So as I was going through this, I thought, well, what the hell does the U.S. Army have to say about optimism? I thought it'd be pretty funny. I grew up military, so like growing up military it's just a different world. I grew up on Air Force bases. Everything is very structured. Feelings don't really matter because we're here to do a job, and the job needs to be done every day, every minute of every day. And you don't argue, you just do. So to have something, like you said, as woo-woo, as realistic optimism being baked into the U.S. Army, it's like, well, now this warrants us digging into. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think Rob Brenneman said this on our podcast, like, a smart man learns from other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
You also can learn what the highest performers are doing and start doing those things, and you're at the same level. They've just been doing it longer and have it more ingrained. So you start today, you're very easily on your way to becoming a different person, you know, a week, a month, a year from now, when you adopt some of these practices. So I think we need to tune in to what the high performers are doing in this world. And I think I've probably come across enough of them that have demonstrated that they have this optimism of opportunity and possibility. Mm-hmm. So how do we cultivate that? What does the Army say?
The Army says, optimism, like pessimism, is a thinking style. You can learn, grow, and cultivate an optimistic mindset by following this formula. It's very military. Here's your formula. Figure it out. The formula is acknowledge reality as is. Have confidence you will prevail in the future and take control. Now, acknowledge reality as is even the bad. Acknowledge all of it, good and bad. Don't just focus on the good. Don't just focus on the bad. Focus on all aspects of the reality that you're living in. Have confidence you will prevail in the future. They put in parentheses, despite of it.
Yeah.
Because it is not I will prevail even though there are hard times. I still will prevail even if there are good times. And no matter what is thrown at me, I'm going to prevail.
I mean, it's the whole concept of what resilience is, right? Advancing despite adversity. And this is how we do it. We stay optimistic. The second you stop thinking that you can move on or get past a challenge, you're right.
Yeah, you're toast.
Yeah.
Take control through preparation, planning, and perseverance. Preparation, planning, and perseverance. You don't take control because you're going to assume all responsibility right when it turns bad and tell everybody what to do. You understand you're going to be presented with shitty situations, with things you don't like, and that the aspect of growth and change and development requires not so great situations. So you have to plan, prepare, and understand you will utilize perseverance.
You know, it's interesting. All my clients, we've been talking about 2025 goals. And then as part of it, they're choosing a word for 2025, what their theme or intention is going to be. And then the next question I've asked them is, how will you handle challenges? And I don't know what I was expecting when I asked this question, but I figured we would get like the same answer over and over. Yeah. I have gotten all unique answers for how we handle challenges.
Really?
One person said, like, I'm going to turn right into them and embrace them. Somebody else said, I'm going to handle it with resilience. Another person said, I'm going to handle it by using my resources. And another person said, I'm going to look at them as opportunities. I mean, everybody gave a slightly different answer, but all of them came back to some component of resilience. And it really boils down to one or more of the domains that we've been going through in the course of this podcast. But I think what it comes down to is they all shared this same sentiment of, I'm going to look at it as something that is helping me grow, which I think really is what we're talking about when we talk about realistic optimism, because you have to think like this is either happening to me for a reason and I'm supposed to learn a lesson from this, or it's helping me solve a problem.
Yeah, it's all feedback.
Yeah, and when you think about it, like I was talking to a business owner and he didn't win a deal because of, something he didn't know about. And I was like, well, man, what a blessing that you learned this early on in your business lifespan. Like, what if it were a deal that was 10 times the size of this one and you had to learn this loss that way? Yeah. And it was so much more painful if it were to happen later on down the road. Like, that's great that you're learning your lessons so early on. And I think, being a new business owner for him, it's not rare to have to face problems. Like, it's so common in business ownership that you're faced with adversity. I mean, I truly think like us doing the work we do is the only reason why we've been able to be business owners that sleep at night.
So I think the concept of take control, this came up quicker than I thought it would in this episode, is just personal responsibility. Like, it's why I like it so much, is because the personal responsibility of taking control of all things, despite whatever adversity is showing up, is the reason why whenever we're presented with whatever we're presented with as small business owners and turning into a medium-sized and then large business, we've been presented with quite a few hurdles in the first 4 months. But the first 4 months, like, we've learned a ton. And every time we're presented with a situation, we view it as, you know what, this is really cool. We got this done in the first year. Well, I'd rather do this in the first year than the 10th year.
Exactly. And it's practice for us so that we can fix these, work out the kinks now or fix the problems, the glitches, while we're not in over our heads, because you bring on so many clients so fast and then all of a sudden you don't have time to slow down and fix the problems. Well, that's why we're being really intentional now and working on building an infrastructure. But we've had plenty of setbacks along the way. I mean, it's not without challenge, right? And I just think that we keep the molehills and don't blow them up to make them mountains every time. The amount of time I would spend venting about my problems 10 years ago, I'd spend probably weeks.
Yeah.
If I had a difficult coworker or felt like my boss was being a jerk or whatever, I mean, it would be all consuming.
Oh, yeah, because it's your whole life. We're also not in control. So that's where I think the biggest difference is between ownership of a business and then working for a business. I'm not in control of anything when I work for a business. I'm just kind of a subject to said rule of law. And if it changes, then I don't have a choice. Like, we changed the structure. It happened to me when I worked for a community bank. They changed the structure of my compensation.
Yeah.
I got the largest bonus they'd ever handed out. And then a week later, I get an email from our home office saying, hey, by the way, essentially you would have to quadruple what you did, which would be to bank an entire city, which was never going to happen.
So basically, here's your punishment for being really good at sales. Exactly.
And I had no control. So right. I couldn't prepare, plan, or prevent that. I had no control over that.
In that environment.
So the control I did have was...
remove yourself from the environment.
Exactly. So I still had control over my actions. But as a small business owner or a business owner, you have control over a lot more variables. So it's a little easier to say, all right, I can move on from this, or here's all the other great things that are going on. So I don't want to view it only through the lens of us. But as a small business owner, I think you take on more variables. Therefore, you're in control of more, so it's a little bit easier to deal with it.
Also take on more risk. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
So, we could have a whole another episode about the pros and the cons of entrepreneurship. But
True.
I think for today's conversation, right, it's about controlling what you can control.
Exactly. That was my point. Is like it's different in the people listening to this, I want them to understand that it's not just two business owners yakking about all the things they have control over. I get it. We've both worked in the private sector. We've both had jobs that just absolutely took the rug out from underneath us, and we took control of that situation, moved on, and became better for it.
Absolutely.
So realistic optimism isn't something that I learned about until we started doing this. When did you learn about realistic optimism?
I learned about optimism when I got certified in EQ. I mean, I knew what the word optimistic meant prior to that, but I think when I really realized optimism was a skill, I think one of the maybe misperceptions of optimism is that, some people are just born glass half full and some people are just born glass half empty. No, it is very much, I think the key phrase you said earlier was, it's a thinking style. So it's an attitude of optimism. You can change your attitude. If you think about it, like if we were to take your fashion style, it's very easy for me to go to another store, pick out a new outfit, and now all of a sudden I've changed my style, right?
Yeah.
Our brain is no different. We can change our thinking style.
So I want to make sure we drive that point home really hard, because I hear that a lot. Well, I'm a pessimist. I'm an optimist. I'm a neutral thinker. No, you chose to do that, and you chose to cultivate that style, and you choose to think that way. You choose to make a optimistic, pessimistic, or neutral style. That's not something I want to be all the time. I used to think optimism was just a happy guy, happy gal. Any of the people I'd see smiling at the grocery store, because for some reason, every time I go to the grocery store, I feel like it's full of miserable people.
Everyone is so upset at the grocery store.
They just look like super fucking pissed.
Especially at Walmart.
It's because it's Walmart.
I know.
Walmart's awful. But even Meijer, I went in there the other day, and I'm like, why the fuck is everybody so upset?
Yeah.
Anyways, I would walk around, the people I would see at the grocery store that were happy or smiling, I'd be like, wow, that's just an optimistic person. Until I started doing all of this coaching work and self-development work, I'm like, well, shit, it's just somebody that has decided they're not going to be upset. They're going to focus on the good stuff.
Well, and you know what's funny? Speaking of people at Meijer, I don't know if you remember this, but back when we ran into Haley at the grocery store, right?
Oh, yeah.
Our coach Haley.
Yes, I remember.
She was pissed, but she had the biggest smile on her face and was so just even through being mad. So the story is her husband's uncle, I believe it was, got Amara, her daughter, a fish for her birthday.
Yes.
And so now basically Haley has a fish that she has to now take care of and get supplies for. And so we ran into Haley in the pet aisle. We were picking up dog food, and she was picking up fish accessories that she never signed up to get. And essentially was doing it for her 4-year-old, right? To make Amara happy because she got this fish for her birthday. So even through her frustration and her anger, she was so just bubbly and positive and laughing it off because she's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with this fish. I now have a fish I have to take care of. And she wasn't happy about it, but she was still positive.
She apologized the second time I met her.
Yeah.
She still will bring it up. And she's like, I can't believe that's the first time I met you. I'm so sorry. I was so mean and just out of sorts. Are you kidding me? I thought you were the happiest person I've ever met.
Yeah.
You looked like you were having a great old time.
I know. And then even after we walked away from her in that interaction at the grocery store, Chris, you were like, I could see why you guys get along so well. You're both really happy people.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, totally. And that was when I knew. I was like, Haley is a positive person that I want to be around. Yeah. And I think that's a key point in cultivating optimism. If you are around a lot of negative people, it will rub off on you.
Oh, easily.
It's neuron mirroring.
So I've ran several gyms, general manager, assistant manager, owner. Fitness facilities are really interesting because it's like it attracts a different kind of group. And the
Weirdos.
number one, we're a little odd.
Yeah, you're
a little
weird.
Church of Iron. But it attracts a certain group of people, and that certain group of people dictate the energy, intensity, and where the gym is going. So you have to be very careful as a gym owner to understand that your leadership dictates membership. And it's a really wild world because it can turn so fast from excited to be there to hating being there, and it will change the entire environment in a month. It'll go from everybody wants to be here, everybody's excited, to why the fuck do we go here? This place sucks. And I've watched it happen literally in 30 days. So I took a gym over in Indy, north side of Indy.
Yeah.
And it went from everybody's excited to be there to I could not get people to show up to work on time. I had to fire everybody that worked there except for one person, 2 people. And even then, I only kept them because I needed them. Like, it was absolutely insane. It just went downhill as fast as possible, 30 days. So our environment definitely dictates it, but we have so much control over our environment.
Yep.
Our personalities, our happiness or our sadness or our anger dictate the surrounding area quickly. So we have to be careful what comes out of our mouth, how we view things, how we approach things, how we talk to people about things. If Haley would have changed her personality and said, fuck this, I'm super mad about this fish, and threw a fit or was angry in that aisle, my view of her would have been skewed.
Right.
But because she was upset and giggling at the same time, she was as happy as I've ever seen her, but she was also upset. She chose to be happy in that situation she hated.
Well, and what I would say is that everything works in perfect balance. So if you say, I've had a hard time and I've really, had a hard life, whatever, and you've experienced a lot of negative emotions, well, just know that when you experience the positive ones, you're going to feel them at the same depth, right? We have to experience both sides of it to appreciate the good side.
That's, I think, one of the biggest fallacies in life right now that we're told. The one I run into all the time with every single one of my coaching clients so far, all of my PT clients, all of my mobility clients, is that they think they're going to arrive one day when they're to this fictitious world that nothing's bad and everything is great. The problem is there's no existence of good without bad.
Right.
You have to have them both because that's the only way the either one exists.
Yep.
Or the other one exists. You have to have, good to have bad. You have to have bad to have good.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That's why I think when we experience bad, we need to actually experience it. We need to be okay with it. We need to kind of soak it in and say, this is it. The only time I grow in the gym, the only time, and I know I'm in a good training session whenever I feel like that muscle group's being ripped off of my body. It is very painful. It's full of blood. It hurts. And I get 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 more reps out of it. And my body is screaming at me. It is painful. But pain equals growth. You have to experience the suck in order to experience the awesomeness at the other end of growth.
I agree.
I enjoy the way my body looks when I train like that because I grow. It's like, wow, this is really cool. I can look in the mirror and I can see it. Duh. But you can't experience the awesomeness without the pain. In fact, the more pain you go through, the more awesome exists. You have to physically remove it from the world and acquire it, which I think is so cool.
I mean, they say no pain, no gain.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cliche and true.
Well, I think that's also what's funny when it comes to like sales or relationships or, anything we go through. We automatically assume that if it's not perfect all the time, it's not meant for me. That's not really how life works.
Nothing's perfect.
Not at all. And there's always growing pains. There's always some kind of friction, and friction's good.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've experienced it whenever we started this office. We opened it up, and it was not immediate friction, but we got some serious friction, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And it's like, this is good, man. We're growing. And the last 2 weeks have been awesome because we just stay with the friction. Keep your foot on the gas.
Yeah, and I think some of the friction can manifest itself in anxiety or worry or frustration.
Yeah.
And I think when you just, like recently, I was frustrated and I'm like, you know what? I need to stop talking about it and I just need to do something about it.
Yeah.
It really is there as a prompt to help you take action.
Yeah, it's data.
Why are you going to sit there and complain about the same thing over and over? And I have to ask myself, if I'm complaining about something, what's within my control that will help me move forward or past this? And if I have no control over this situation, how can I accept it and just move forward again so I can make some progress, right? Because staying stuck in the friction or in the frustration is so useless.
You're already in pain. You might as well get something out of it.
It truly is a matter of practicing acceptance. Like,
Yeah.
I have to accept the things that I can't control, right? And then find the things I can control that will help me advance my position. So whether that means you need to quit your job, or you need to find a resource, or you need to Google some stuff to help you work through a problem, you have to do something. You can't just sit there and complain about it. It's the most useless state of being, if you ask me.
Well, it also extends that state, right?
Yes,
So
and the more you bitch about something or vent about something, the more you're just solidifying your position.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, if I come to you and I vent to you about a problem, and then 1 week later I'm venting to you about the same problem, I have failed somewhere.
Yeah.
I have failed to take personal responsibility for my situation and do something, again, to advance my position in life.
So I heard it in, I think, a motivational video somewhere, but it was, you're already in pain, you might as well get something out of it.
Yeah.
So when I get in a situation that I'm frustrated, I feel anxiety, I feel anger, sadness, whatever, I'm already there. I'm already at what I would call like the rock bottom feeling. I want to do something with this. How can I avoid being here again? And how can I utilize this feeling in order to make me grow?
Yep.
So now that we have established realistic optimism, we understand how we both came about understanding it. How would you help somebody apply it? Because that's the real issue, right? Is, yes, we understand realistic optimism. We've heard a song about it. Like realistic optimism is a thing. So what do we do with it? How do we apply it? How do we start cultivating realistic optimism in our life?
One, I think first and foremost, it has to be intentional. If you're a glass half empty kind of person, you're going to have to work on this, and you're going to have to very consciously catch yourself in a negative mindset. You're going to have to catch yourself in that thinking style and say, okay, wait, why am I thinking this way? If I'm going to give my attention to the worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario? Because I need to have equal sides of attention to a scenario. If I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about worst case scenario and cultivating all these anxious negative feelings, I got to give my brain exercise on the positive side of things. And we don't naturally go there. We naturally go to the negative side of things because our limbic system is responsible for detecting threats. And it's always going to bring any kind of risk to our attention. That's what it's there for. So say, thanks, brain, for doing a great job. Now let's think about the other side of this. What's the best case scenario?
I'm not actually in danger, brain. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, but I don't need this portion of it.
Yeah.
I have that conversation with my noggin pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it up, but I'm not running away from any bears here.
Yeah.
So like, what is this feeling and what can I do with it? And I remember you saying this when we first started dating. The brain doesn't know the difference between reality and what you tell it.
Yeah.
So if I'm telling it the reality of this sucks, glass is half empty all the time, it's just going to validate that. So I need to retrain my brain to say, or to tell it and retrain it intentionally with, well, what's good about this situation? What am I learning? How can I cultivate this? How can I never be here again? You know, what am I doing with said stimulus to become a better person to not revisit this?
Well, and I think what you brought up is important to just reiterate, because your brain does not know what is real, what is imagined. Meaning, okay, so best is example. Have you ever had a dream where you're falling?
Yeah.
And you wake up like feeling like you're falling?
Yeah.
That is the power of our brain in action.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So our brain made us physiologically have the feeling of falling. When you think about the worst case scenarios, your body responds as if it is actually happening. So the danger in having all these negative thoughts is that we are going to send our body through the ringer.
Yeah.
With imaginary scenarios that are so unproductive and release all of these neurochemicals that stress us out.
So I used to go through this phase for several years where I would have just like massive fits of anxiety where I would get this cold feeling in my chest and just I could feel the cortisol and adrenaline go through my body. It was just this whoosh feeling, and it would debilitate me. I would be driving in the car, and it's all of a sudden I felt like I missed every paper that was ever due in every aspect of high school and every class or college, and it's like I just suck at life right now.
Yeah.
But I had to start telling myself, using reality testing, like, what is actually happening right here? I'm on my way to the gym. Nobody's dying. Kids are good. Like, job's great. I need to start telling myself or reminding myself that I actually live in a great environment with great things happening.
Yeah.
And there's really no reason for this fear at all.
Yeah.
But through a lot of my life early on, I was raised with a high anxiety level. So it's like I trained myself to view life through the lens of anxiety. So you have to retrain it. And it's the same life, same person, same stimulus.
Yeah.
I just had to train myself differently.
Well, and our upbringing definitely impacts our mindset. If we have very optimistic parents, chances are we learned optimism at a young age. Now, on the flip side of that, if we had parents who weren't necessarily optimistic, it may be something that we have to work on now that we're adults. Mm-hmm. But the choice is ours. You adopt a negative mindset or a pessimistic outlook, you're only punishing yourself. You're making your time on Earth far less enjoyable than it really needs to be. I mean, look at what we have. Like, everything we do is with modern convenience. I mean, we have a machine that washes our clothes. We have a machine that washes our dishes. Some people pay people to come clean their house. We have vehicles that move us cross country if we desire. We have the ability to rent out other people's houses.
Yeah.
For a weekend or whatever.
Wherever we want inside of the continental United States or overseas. The entire globe is ours.
I mean, just go back like a few hundred years ago when there weren't cars. Is my timeline right? Did we have cars a couple hundred years ago?
A couple hundred years ago, people were using outhouses and didn't have running water.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we take hot showers, like, we don't have to beat our clothes against a rock to...
Talking about the 1800s.
I don't even know, like, what the purpose of throwing your clothes against a rock were. Is that to clean them or to dry them? I don't even know. I wouldn't even know what to do with it. Yeah. But, like... Point being, I can literally press a button and make myself coffee. Like, there's so much around us that we have to be grateful for and to be excited about, and all of the modern convenience that we've got really does not make anything hard for us. Now, we do have adversity that will hit us at any given time, but the resources we have available to us now to handle these problems is so much more advanced. And we also have a really advanced medical system. Like, you break a leg or you break a bone, right? Like, you're in the process of getting healed or fixed in a matter of like minutes. You can get to the hospital and have care within an hour of severing a limb, right?
Well, those are the things that killed people back in the day.
Yeah.
Like, you were lucky to make it to your 40s for a long time in human history.
Yeah.
So we're talking generations and generations and generations of absolute, what we would call absolute poverty.
Yeah.
And we're living in a world where we have more available to us than we've ever had, but have high depression rates. So I think it's, like you were saying, we have to focus on the things that are good, and focus on the things around us that are there for us, not by us or for us intentionally, but we get to utilize. Like the what? Fucking roads we drive on in our cars, the parking spots, the lighted streets or lit up streets, the roundabouts we have here in Carmel, like all of these things were built for convenience for people, and we get to utilize it, but we're not out there repouring the concrete. We're not out there framing the fucking sidewalks, but we get them.
It makes me like kind of embarrassed when I go to Costco and I am mentally complaining in my head about how far back I have to park. And
that's why I just go straight to the back and park. It's like, you know what, man, at the end of the day, this is awesome. You know, just park in the fucking parking spot and walk in.
Cool. I'm getting my steps in. Like, well, I have the choice. And like, look, I'm not perfect at this. I think I'm pretty optimistic in most scenarios, but like on a cold, windy day, I don't love walking extra steps to get into the Costco door. Yeah. But could I find a positive silver lining in the whole thing? Absolutely. We can find that in every situation.
Yeah. And you're a little weird. If you walked around all the time being like, oh, I'm so happy for this rug and this carpet and these walls and this drywall, and you're weird, man. Don't do that.
What an awesome parking meter.
Yeah, like that's strange. No, obviously you're going to be frustrated with things in life. Like, we bank our decisions on the convenience that we're not in control of.
Right.
Like, I understand that. And it is inconvenient when the road's being worked on and you don't know. So it does cultivate a little frustration. We just have to make sure that we understand that those feelings are under our control. So now that we understand realistic optimism and how we can do something with it, what would you give out as first steps to somebody that's listening to this podcast and like, you know what, this is great. How do I start? Just something simple.
Ask yourself why this is a lucky situation. So the next time you have like a glass half empty perspective, one, you have to catch it. You have to recognize that you're thinking negatively. Mm-hmm. Ask yourself, why is this a good thing?
I like that. The only piece of advice I would give for somebody that's starting this is start to recognize that emotions are your choice.
Yeah.
So whenever you're in a situation and you're like, God, this fucking sucks, say, I'm choosing to say that. I'm choosing to feel this way. So if I get to choose to feel this way, I also get to choose to feel a different way.
In my mindset course with Dream Fuel, one of the cool mental tools that Kevin gave us was best thing that could have happened. Yeah. So anytime something shitty happens, you just immediately tell yourself best thing that could have happened. And then you have to give your brain reasons why. I learned this technique, and then almost immediately after, I spilled coffee in my brand new Jeep.
I was just going to tell that story.
I know. I spilled coffee in the brand new Jeep, and I was like devastated. I literally looked there and was like, oh, I can't believe this happened. Like, brand new, what the heck, furious, right? Best thing that could have happened. Well, I haven't cleaned the cup holders yet. And luckily it didn't get on any of the seats because those were cloth at the time. I've upgraded to leather, thank God. Much easier to clean for my dirty self at times. But immediately give yourself reasons why this is the best thing that could have happened. I got pulled over for speeding. My fault. I was headed to church. I was late. And I get pulled over, and he's like, where are you headed? And, of course, I'm like, church. I'm such a nice girl. Like,
To see Jesus.
to see Jesus? Give me a break. And I think I can't remember if I got a ticket on this one. It doesn't matter. But afterwards, I was like, best thing that could have happened. I might have just avoided a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I had gotten pulled over so that I would avoid being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I will tell myself all sorts of stories to make myself feel better about whatever situation I'm currently in. So I think that is like the easiest way to get you from negative thinking to positive thinking.
So real quick, I don't think that you're offbeat at all, but I think if you take a negative approach to this conversation, you use the phrase, I tell myself all these stories to keep yourself in a positive mindset. You're telling yourself stories either way.
Yeah.
Negative or positive, you're telling yourself a story. So, like, it's not really all that different. You're just choosing to be positive with it.
It's very simple.
All right. Just like all our other episodes here, I want to hear from y'all. Reach out. Let us know if you're working on realistic optimism or you have a funny story that you utilized realistic optimism in. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
I love talking to people that hear this podcast.
Well, and it's also great to hear what's resonating. So if you listen to an episode and you're like, oh, this was money, let us know. If you listen to another episode and you're like, oh, that one wasn't really that helpful, also let us know. We want feedback. Good, bad, ugly.
Yeah.
We want to hear it all.
Amen.
Thanks for listening to Redefining Resilience.
To learn more about building your mental and physical readiness, check out odysseyresilience.org.
And follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok.